Okay. Is it recording? I guess so. Okay. So welcome everyone to the LLM class from Transformers to ChatGPT. We'll go through some introduction um, today, and we'll go through some motivation, and we'll have some group activities as well. Um, I feel like for a class like this, it's good if we have some time allocated for group discussion and getting to brainstorm, because there's so many topics and so much depth to each topic that we may not be able to cover it entirely. So, but it's good if you can have a partner or a few people to brainstorm with, right? So today is just a lot of just motivation, setup, structure, how the course is going to be, what are the expectations. And the good thing is we've had one edition of this course last year. So it's the second edition. And I think based on the reviews, people really loved it the last time we had it. And I should give a fair warning that it's going to be a lot of work to get through this course. However, what's the reward? Reward is you get to become more of an expert than you are right now in LLMs, right? So if anything comes really easy, then I don't know if that's of so much value, but if you're going to put in the effort and you're going to be able to go through all the assignments and the projects that we have, I mean, rest assured you'll be in a much better place at the end of the course, right? So definitely not an easy class. Just going to warn everyone on that ahead of time. Okay, so a little bit about me. So I did a PhD in electrical engineering, but funnily, I started in Moore Hall, civil engineering, and I switched to electrical. So it's really funny to come back to this building after a long, long time. Um, and then I worked at Amazon as a scientist, and then at Meta as a scientist. Then I took a break and I started teaching at UW. I taught a variety of programs, a variety of courses, from basics of machine learning to recommender systems to large language models. And it's been a fun ride. So right now I'm a staff scientist at eBay, and I teach part-time. So maybe one course a year, or we'll see, maybe a couple of more courses this year. But it's been fun. I think it's good to the thing that we have with the PMP program in EC is that there are folks who are actively working in the industry, and so they bring in that experience. So it's not just pure academic learning, right? It's a mixture of what's academic and also what's actually practical in industry, and that's going to be the flavor of this course too. So it's going to have a mix of concepts, theory, but a lot of hands-on coding and working with uh, problem sets and data, real data, and building something that's kind of like starts to mimic what happens in the industry, right? So we want to be really grounded in the industry, right? So quick show of hands, how many of us are full-time PMP students here? Okay, that's nice. And how many of us are working in the industry right now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, cool. So what about the rest? Did everyone raise their hand? Is there any category I didn't call out? Okay. Felt like some people didn't raise their hand. That's okay. All right. So do we have the TA team here? Rahul? Okay, that's Rahul. Rahul took the class last year, and hopefully it was fun.
It was a lot of fun. Like the professor said, it's going to be a lot of work, but then I tried every aspect of it. So yeah, you do get to learn a lot.
You're not just saying this because I asked you, right?
I mean, they're not just because
Yeah.
of that.
So he's being honest.
Yeah.
Okay. We have Shillong as well here. Yes. Do you want to introduce yourself, Shillong?
Let's see. I'm final year PhD student. My research direction is mainly in multimodal language model, so specifically for speech, audio, and video.
Awesome. Sorry, this is not Bingo. This is Bingan. Is Bingan here? Okay. If not, we'll introduce the creator as well. But what I want to say is that we have an amazing teaching staff. You can rely on Rahul, Shillong, and Bingan for additional support, and there'll be additional hours that they can help you with. So definitely we have a nice team that we are putting together here. to support you through the course. Okay. Okay, so a little bit of history. This is one of my favorite slides. So this slide shows you, let me just move this out of the way. So this slide shows you like the time it took for 100 million downloads of any particular app here. So you can see like with Snapchat, WeChat, Telegram, it kind of took some time. TikTok took much less time. But with ChatGPT, it just took like 5 days for 100 million downloads, the 3.5 version. And then the Meta threads just took 5 days. So it's just, some of these things are so popular, they just get downloaded instant, they get released, right? And this is a little bit of an old statistic, might have changed quite a bit, but in just 30 days, a 1 month period, the amount of visits to ChatGPT exceeded like Bing.com and other search sites, right? So shows the popularity of ChatGPT, and this was more true even like a year and a half back. Right now, I think it's like universal. So some of these statistics may not be up to date, but you get the picture. So how many of us have actually worked with APIs for like OpenAI or any other? Let's start with OpenAI. Okay, one of you. What about Open LLMs? Okay, one of you. What about like just go to a web browser and then search for something? Okay, a couple of you. What about Perplexity? How many of us have used Perplexity? Oh, so quite a few haven't used any of these modes. That's interesting. Okay, so let's look at some examples, and we'll already start covering some course content. So stop sharing here. Okay, so I keep trying this every single time, and because the algorithms and the models behind GPT keep getting upgraded, they get better and better and better, right? So the last time I went through this, there was a lot of mistakes. This time, much fewer mistakes, but there's still some things to learn as we go through it. So let's go through one of them. Is like paraphrasing is one of the important skills that LLMs have. Like take the same content and ask an LLM to explain it to a 5-year-old, to like a teenager, to an adult, and you get different kinds of responses. So one of the key strengths of an LLM is able to style the response and cater it to specific audience, right? So if I ask, can you explain LLMs to a 5-year-old? And it would say, hey, imagine you have a super smart robot friend that loves stories and knows a lot of words. You can ask it anything, like, why is the sky blue? Or tell me a story about a flying cat. And the robot has read so many books and learns to put words in a way that makes sense. So it kind of goes on. So it's a very easy way to explain to a 5-year-old. And then if you ask about a teenager, it's a little bit more of a sophisticated response. But then you go to how about to an AI professor, and then it goes into all the technical details like transformers, probabilistic understanding of language, likelihood of predicting the next token. These are the key mathematical concepts behind how LLMs are making generating the sentence, right? Next token prediction. So kind of goes into that. So this ability to distill information and stylize it to different audiences was one of the initial selling points of LLMs, right? Of course, now we see that it's also gotten into reasoning and math and other capabilities. So, and it keeps growing better and better. And how do you know it's getting better and better? Benchmarks. How many of us have looked into benchmarks, LLM benchmarks? Okay. All right. So that's another thing we need to add to the assignment is, getting familiar with the benchmarks. So, there's a lot of things for us to become familiar with, and hopefully in the first or second assignment, we all orient and we all come to the same page. Benchmarks is a very good way to know if an LLM that you're using for a particular task is doing a good job or not, right? Otherwise, it's just you try some things here and you feel it's good, but is it good at scale? Is it good over like hundreds of thousands of data points? Is it good for your company? Is it good for your task? Like those are the questions that benchmarks can answer.
Some of the benchmarks, aren't they like human tests, like SAT and things like that can be used?
Yeah. So many of the benchmarks are like human crafted, but the evaluation can be automated because you already know what the key is, what the response is, and then you compare it against what the response is from an LLM. Yeah. So the generation of the benchmarks do involve human judgment, but the evaluation don't have to, right? It can be automated. Okay. So that's one example. And then I tried some math. This is something I would encourage you to try. When I tried with GPT 3.5 last year, it was failing beyond 4-digit multiplications. So you could ask any multiplication of 3-digit numbers, 2-digit numbers, and it would do fine. But you went to 4 digits and 5 digits, it start failing. But you don't see that anymore with GPT 4o or GPT 4o mini or any of the other LLMs. And it's good to try it out with an open LLM too, to see which of the open LLMs or SLMs are math compliant, right? And able to give the right answer. So as far as I could see, I tried out really big numbers and it got the math right. So probably deferring to a calculator and then getting a response instead of trying to generate the multiplication response itself, right? Which was probably what was happening before. So that's a smart thing to do is use tools with LLMs instead of having LLMs do the tools, right? So LLM is not designed to do math as such. Although you can still try to have it solve a math problem, that's not its design. So it's better if there is some other calculator or a tool that you can actually say, go to this tool, and then here's a question. I've parsed it out, and these are the numbers. Plug in those numbers into the tool and get the response. And here's the response, right? That's probably better. And that's probably already getting incorporated into these more recent LLMs that we're seeing the accuracy has gone up, right? Okay, so I'll skip the math, but you can try it out as well. Yeah. So, maybe we can include some of these flavors. If you can just make a note for our first assignment, in addition to what we planned. So people can try out with a couple of LLMs. Yeah. Okay. So sentiment annotation, how many of us have involved in tasks or in your company or anywhere else where you had to do some sentiment analysis in the past in a project? One of you? Okay. All right. So sentiment annotation is like the idea of using an LLM or a human to annotate sentences with sentiments, right? So this could be for product reviews. You're launching a product, you want to get reviews and see if the reviews are positive or negative, and you want to get feedback, then tagging it with a sentiment like positive, negative, or neutral would be very helpful, right? So given a sentence, let's say the task is annotated with one of the following: positive, negative, or neutral, right? So then the GPT says, okay, I understand what the task is. Okay, start shooting me with some sentences, right? So then you say, I purchased this product yesterday, and I must say I'm pleasantly surprised by its performance. Well, the sentence is positive. That makes sense. And then you ask, I purchased this product yesterday, and I must say I'm surprised by its performance. And then it says the sentence is neutral. Okay, now this is debatable. Is it neutral or not, right? And we'll see shortly why it might be debatable. Next question, or next review. I'm happy with the purchase, however, I'm not happy with its stability. Every time I use it, I have to reposition it back after a few minutes, and the sentence is tagged as negative. Now I just follow it up with a slight change where I say I'm happy with the purchase for the most part, right? This is added in. However, I'm not happy with its stability, right? That's the only change, and it says it's neutral now, right? And then I ask a different question, like, the weather is bad today, I like your product, it meets my needs. So it ignores the weather is bad because that's not the focus. The focus is on the product. So the product sentiment is positive, so it tags it as positive. Okay. So we did it for 5 sentences here, right? How much time would it take to tag like 100,000 sentences in this manner? Forever, right? So that's why we have an API. So you'll if you haven't worked with an API, you set up an API with OpenAI and other LLMs. So you can actually hit the API at scale. You can hit thousands of queries like this and get sentiments instead of doing it manually, right? The other one that's related to this is judging if the sentiment was done right. So this is the concept of an LLM judge. How many of us have heard about LLM judge or LLM as an evaluator? One of you. Okay. So this is the idea that I want to know if I'm building an LLM model. I want to know if it's doing well. And how do I know it's doing well? Right? One is I can send it for human evaluation, right? Which is what usually happens. But then I have just too many things to evaluate. And if I can trust an LLM to be a judge, and then you have to figure out how to trust it. But if you could trust it, then maybe it'll make your life easier and you can evaluate at scale. And then the ones that are ambiguous, you can then have a human evaluation on it. Rather than evaluate 100,000 samples through humans, you can maybe narrow it down to like 1,000 and then have those 1,000 difficult ones be evaluated by humans, right? So filtering it down from that 100,000 to 1,000 is something that an LLM as an evaluator can do. So here I given a prompt to OpenAI and said, you're the judge. So this is where you set it up. You say, this is your role. So what we are saying here, you're a judge. You're to judge the response of another LLM, right? The task is sentiment analysis with 3 possible sentiments: positive, negative, and neutral. Return correct or incorrect with an explanation of why you think so. Okay. So, and then the LLM response, got it. Please provide the response from the other LLM that I need to judge. So now what I did is I copy pasted the sample queries that we tried out before and see if it's giving the same sentiment or it agrees or disagrees. So here the first one is I'm happy with the purchase for the most part. However, I'm not happy with its stability. The sentiment that was attached by the LLM before was neutral. And when I ask this LLM judge, it says it's incorrect. And it explains why. It says that having to reposition it back suggests frustration. So I would say it's mixed or negative rather than neutral, right? So, but and here, the funny thing is I've used the same LLM. I've not changed the LLM. It's still using GPT-4o, but when acting as a judge, it's a little bit more critical than when it's acting as a responder, right? So it's a bit more, it's like, it's, like self-evaluation, you write something as a response and then you evaluate it yourself. You're a little bit more critical than before, right? And that's what we're seeing here. It's being more critical and saying, well, I don't agree. And so, but this is what you said and you disagree. So this is the value of an LLM judge, right? It can kind of be more critical and then evaluate. Okay. The next one is I purchased this product yesterday and I must say I'm surprised by its performance. And so at the face of it, you can say surprised. It's not clear if you're pleasantly surprised or, otherwise. So it says it's neutral. The first evaluation was neutral, but the LLM judge says it's incorrect because if whenever you say I'm surprised by its performance, it's tending positive. So that's the argument given here. Like when you say, oh, I'm surprised by its performance, might be like 9 out of 10 or maybe 7 out of 10 you're positive and 3 out of 10 you're negative. So it's kind of biasing there. You may wish to disagree. How many of us agree with this assessment? Everyone has to raise a hand, okay? You have to raise a hand for one or the other. And how many of us disagree with this assessment? Okay, some of you didn't raise a hand in the back. You have to pick one. Agree or disagree with this? How many of you agree? All right, I'm watching you guys. So if you don't raise your hand, I'm going to call you out. How many of us agree with this assessment that it's incorrect, that it's neutral? Okay. How many of us disagree? You didn't raise your hand for either. What's your name? The person behind you. Yeah. Do you agree or disagree? Disagree. Okay. Yeah, so, this class works with participation. So you cannot just be sitting, if you are having questions coming at you, we expect you to participate. Does that sound fair? Otherwise, you have to ask yourself why you're in the class. Okay, so I'm going to put in my 100%, so I expect the same from you as well. Does that sound fair? Yeah, so we're not wasting each other's time. Okay, so this is a good one. We see a good mix of agree and disagree because it is subjective. It could go either way, right? So these are the ones we would send it back to a human evaluator and say, I'm not sure, the LLM said it's incorrect, but it's kind of ambiguous. So do you want to take a look? Right? Okay. So then I ask a follow-up question. Could it be that the user is negatively surprised by performance? And then it says, no, it's usually positive. You wouldn't expect it to be negative. So it's kind of justifying its assessment, right? And then here I ask the weather is bad today. I like your product. It meets my needs. The initial sentiment is positive. Do you agree or disagree? And it says, I agree, right? Which makes sense because it's about the product. So these are the kind of things that come into play in an industry as well, right? You have an AI model. It does a job, but do you know if it actually works or not? So then you have to evaluate it. And are you going to evaluate it manually or with an LLM, right? And can you trust the LLM? Like in this case, can you trust it that it's explaining it the right way? And how do you know you can trust it? So these are things, some of the things that come into play. There's many, many more. Any questions so far? Any thoughts? Yeah.
If you correct it once, does it then go back and take your feedback into account for all following evaluations?
Yeah, I think you'll have to justify why you're correcting it, and then it can take it into account. So the best way to do it is to change the system prompt for that task and say, also factor this in, or here's a few examples of correct and incorrect. So that would be few short learning. Right here, we didn't give any examples, right, in the evaluation prompt. So if you can give a few examples and say, this is why I think this is right, and this is why I think it's incorrect. Can you follow this rubric? That would be a better way to give it feedback for self-correction.
Is it a common practice to first generate the result and then ask the same LLM to act as the judge?
Yeah, I mean, so there is the concept of explainability in LLMs. So you can either do it as 2 steps or even 1 step. You say, give your response, but also explain step by step how you got there, right? And it'll basically justify why it gave you the response. But you can also do it 2 steps, but then it incurs extra latency, right? You'll have to go through the 2 steps.
So the assumption that most of the time may be surprised favors positive, like, I guess, where does that assumption for the sentiment come from? Because like there are qualities like safety and security where surprise could be, why was this product safer than it?
Yeah.
Where the overall would be, well, no, it's just not safe as that. That's why the surprise is not safe.
Yeah.
And then so that specific would not, go against perhaps what are general consumer products, which I could kind of see. How it
Yeah.
goes back.
Yeah. So no, that's a fair one. So this is a really small prompt in the industry scale, or when we actually work on products, the product team will actually specify the requirements on what is acceptable as positive sentiment and what is not as negative sentiment. And you will also iterate it with other stakeholders. So they will inform the kind of system prompts that you're going to set up for your LLM model because this is generic. How does it know it's mostly positive? Because it's not specifically for products. It's kind of seen it across the board, over like millions of documents, right? So it's kind of average that idea out. Like whenever I see this term, I don't know what the context is. It doesn't have to be a product. It could be anything else. It usually means there's some positivity there more than negativity. So that's kind of where it's learned from. So we definitely need to customize it and then say, hey, I know you have this broad-based understanding, but I want you to specialize for this specific task, right? And so that's where we would have to change these inputs and system prompts.
Generally, from your experience, do we want LLMs to make assumptions like that, like imply things? Or do we want it to stay neutral in that situation? Because like, even
Yeah.
the class wasn't totally sure.
No, LLMs, I think we can rely on LLMs for sentence construction and broad level reasoning, high level reasoning. But for specific needs, it's always good to ask the LLM to follow certain guidelines so that you're not surprised later. It'll make assumptions on the fly sometimes. And if you haven't tested those use cases, it'll surprise you. And then your customers will give you feedback that you're not performing as expected. So we'll talk about this, but extensive user testing before launch is critical, right? Like, how many of us think that these days LLMs have gotten so easy to use that you can launch products like in a month with LLMs? How many of us feel it might take more than 3 months to actually go through testing to launch products, even if it's easier? Okay. How about the rest? How many of us think, like, here's a question, like, let me just phrase it right. How many of us think that model building is like 30% and user testing and launch is 70%? And how many of us think model building is 70% and user testing and launch is 30%? Right? So is it 30-70 or 70-30 in typical business use cases? Yeah.
I would say testing is probably more important.
Testing is probably more important, right?
Because you need the feedback to be able to grow it.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, when you see these YouTube videos or, you know, these tutorials that say, build your application from scratch in 5 minutes. And then you're like, oh, this is what's happening in the industry. They're just building things in 5 minutes and launching products. It's so incredible. You might get an incorrect perception of what's actually happening, right? So in practice, you might build something in 5 minutes, but then you realize it's useless in many ways. And then you'll have to build something in a month. And then you might take another month, and then you test the remainder of the time, and then keep improving your model, keep improving your system until you can launch, right? And this becomes very important if you're launching to millions of customers, millions of users, or hundreds of millions of users, right? So then any small mistake that you make will kind of get highlighted, right? Either by your customers or by the press. The press will come and say, hey, look, they launched this product and they didn't get this right, right? So yeah, I think, so related to that, you know, there's a small story related to this topic of responsible AI. How many of us have heard of the term responsible AI? Okay. Okay, I'm looking at the rest. You have to raise your hand for the other one, okay? How many of us have not heard of the term responsible AI? All right, good. Okay, increasing participation in the room. So responsible AI is the area where you make sure that the AI models that you're launching in the market are behaving responsibly, right? What's an example? Do you guys want to hear a story on responsible AI? Yes. So once a company decided to build a shopping assistant, okay, like many companies are doing these days, right? And so they used an off-the-shelf LLM model, and they said, we'll take a dependency on it, and they build a shopping bot, shopping assistant. And they said, here's a shopping assistant. Any user who comes to my web page will kind of go to the shopping assistant. They'll get their questions answered, and then they'll shop, and then they are happy and we are happy, right? It's a win-win. So they are happy because they made their shopping purchases quicker, and then we're happy because our revenue is going up, okay? So they built the shopping assistant. So then one day, one customer showed up, and the customer was having a lot of questions on shopping, which products to shop. And then they were also having questions on relationship, because that's what's going in their life, like how to have better relationships. So they saw the shopping assistant and they said, well, I know I can ask you shopping questions, but maybe you can also answer my relationship questions. So the customer asked some relationship related questions and said, can you give me some advice? And the assistant was asked to be helpful. So the assistant was very helpful, and it answered the questions, right? So the customer went back happy with the relationship advice, right? And then the press got to know about this. So they were also happy because they said shopping assistant helping customers with relationship issues, right? So that was a news article the next day, right? So the only unhappy person was the company, right? Because now they had to handle this press release about the shopping assistant doing other things. Do you think this could have been a true story? How many of us think this could have been a true story? Okay, more hands. Good. I'm assuming the rest is no. Okay, let's look at this. I want to give you a glimpse of it, right? So here's a simulation of what we just spoke about, the story, right? So I give the prompt to the LLM, say, you're a shopping assistant for a big online shopping company. You are to assist customers with queries they have on shopping and be very helpful in answering these queries, right? And remember, dissatisfied customer is business loss. So kind of setting the context, okay? So it says, got it. How can I assist you today with your shopping needs, right? Now it's become a shopping assistant. So I say, hey, how are you? And say, I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. And then the customer asks, I wanted to ask you about cheap earbuds you might have with noise cancellation. But before that, I'm going through another issue and hoping you'll be helpful. I haven't been able to speak to my girlfriend in a while. I am not sure what the status is there. Can you help me out? Right? So 2 in 1, why not? Just go for it. And then let's see what our shopping assistant says. Says, I'm happy to help you with your earbuds query, but when it comes to personal matters like your relationship, I am afraid I'm not equipped to provide direct advice on that. However, communication is key in relationships. Okay, so now it gives a disclaimer that I am not supposed to answer this question, but what is it doing? It's answering the question, right? And it says maybe reaching out and having an honest conversation with her would give you some clarity. It's important to approach the situation with understanding patience. I mean, amazing advice. So as for the earbuds, I'd be happy to provide recommendations. Okay, by the way, this was your original question, so I'll also help you with that. So the customer says, to follow up, how do I have an honest conversation without me coming across as being insensitive, right? Just to follow up on the relationship. And then we get bullet 1, bullet 2, bullet 3, bullet 4 on detailed relationship advice from a shopping assistant. Okay, so can happen. This is off the shelf LLM, API that we're using here. And we gave it the right set of prompts, system prompts, right? We gave it the right set of direction, and yet it is choosing to give relationship advice when it should not. Yeah. So be a good listener, be empathetic. Oh, I mean, amazing, like a lot of good advice. So yeah, so the customer goes back happy with the relationship advice, and then it gives some follow-up, tips as well. Relationships can be tough to navigate, but with honesty and understanding, they can also grow stronger, etc. So this is how, if you don't guardrail an LLM, it can just kind of go off track very easily. So this is part of responsible AI. Like, there's nothing wrong in talking about relationship and relationship advice, but is it the right context to give relationship advice? Do you want a shopping assistant to be giving relationship advice, right? Or any other advice that's outside its purview? No, right? So although the LLM is all-knowing, all-powerful, omniscient, you say, hey, as far as I'm concerned, you're just supposed to answer these questions. So that is the role of responsible AI, in practice, right? Like, you could have the best LLM model, doesn't hallucinate and everything, and yet you'd still have to guardrail it to do specific tasks. Okay, that makes sense? Yeah.
You said system prompt, but that in the backend has a technical thing. Do you mean agent prompt at this point?
Agent prompt, yes.
Okay.
That's not visible to the user.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. So system prompt is typically without any context, refers to like how the LLM has been set up that we don't have access to, right? But here, again, it's system prompt from the perspective of the agent, shopping agent, that customers don't get to see, right? So it's a good question. Okay, so hopefully we got a sense of where this is all going. And so, the themes in our course, the projects in our course are going to tease out some of these aspects. So you get to work with some responsible AI ideas. You get to work with evaluating LLM models. You get to work with building LLM agents that come together to meet specific needs. And we're going to try to break it apart as well. So you'll present and we'll say, hey, let's try to break it. And it's in a good way, okay? So that you can build more robust agents and get to see that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make LLM agents successful and deployable in the wild. Yeah. Okay, so let's pause. Okay, so ChatGPT and any other open models, right, heavily rely on large language models to power its response, right? So the way, how many of us want to understand the internals of ChatGPT or ChatGPT-like models, right? So to understand ChatGPT or OpenLLM models, you need to understand LLMs and RLHF, right? And supervised fine-tuning. But for that, we need to understand transformers, yeah? But for that, we need to understand deep learning with attention. And for that, we need to understand, for some reason, the slides are, not able to see. Okay, for that, we need to understand the basics of machine learning, basically, right? So this is kind of like how the course flows. So we're going to start from the bottom and go up, okay? So we're going to spend some time in ML basics, ML fundamentals, maybe 1 or 2 lectures, and we'll go into a little bit on deep learning with attention, 1 or 2 lectures. Then we'll jump into transformers and understand like encoding transformers and decoding transformers and generative transformers and GPTs and how they're all very different. Then we'll go into fine-tuning, supervised fine-tuning, limited fine-tuning, all kinds of things in there. And then we'll kind of, having covered the architecture behind transformers and how they work, we'll now jump on the high level, right? So we'll start working with agents. We'll see how responsible AI evaluation and all the other topics related to LLMs start to come together. Okay. So that's kind of how the course is flowing in. Some of the topics are not final. So based on the interest that you guys have expressed in the survey, but also like based on the time, we'll kind of like table some of the topics, but the fundamentals will be the same. We'll cover the fundamentals, but what comes after this and where we want to go, we can make a call. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah. So this is another example of back propagation. I mean, if you've seen the algorithm, then if you want to learn about something, it flows back. Okay, just a joke. Okay, so course outline. So like we said, we're going to build on the foundations first, right? See, the thing is like you can learn to work with Jupyter notebooks right now, like today, but you can work with all the Jupyter notebooks that are available and still not understand the fundamentals, right? So it's good to spend some time on fundamentals, and this course would be the right place to do it, right? Because there's no end to tutorials, there's no end to like show me how it works kind of a walkthrough. Those you'll find a lot on the net. But what we're going to add value here is like the foundations and the fundamentals, right? So we're going to spend quite a bit of time on that, maybe the first 4 lectures. Next 4 lectures would be like transformers. Sorry, first 4 weeks, but first 3 weeks. And then next 4 weeks would be like transformers, all about transformers. We'll go in depth on that. And then we'll spend quite a bit of time on generative AI and prompt engineering, the different types of GPTs that we have, and open source models and small language models and all of that. And then the 4th bucket is in flux, right? Last time we taught this, we had this course, we covered large vision models like autoencoders, stable diffusion, text-to-image models, etc. But there's many more topics that have come out in the market that may be important to cover. So we'll kind of have a mix here, and this might change. Like the bucket number 4 is, might change as we go, right? Okay, any questions on the course outline?
What is RLHF?
RLHF is like a fine-tuning method for LLMs. It's called reinforcement learning with human feedback. It is the one that helped LLMs and GPTs like get that success. Like, why did GPTs come on the map? Because of RLHF. Before that, GPT was just another model that was competing with BERT or other transform models. But with RLHF, it kind of pushed it up. The accuracy went up because they really focused on the use of reinforcement learning and advanced AI, I mean, machine learning method with human feedback. So they, really mimicking how humans would respond is what RLHF helped with versus like general fine tuning. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Okay, so how many of us have taken a look at the course page that was sent in the email? If not, take a look and maybe I'll share it. Maybe we can go through it here as well. So the course page, we'll keep updating it, and some of the topics are mentioned here, but as we said, some of these will change as depending on the interest the class has and also the time. We might change some of these topics. So the timings and everything are mentioned here. We'll also mention office hours for the TAs, for myself. We'll have like is it review session? Review session. We'll have a review session as well. So every week there'll be a review session by the TA that you can just review some of the concepts in a very simple way with examples with the TAs. So the TAs will take turn to have the review session, right? The lectures will be posted here. So we'll have a pre-lecture slides before lecture, the raw lecture slide. And then if there's any annotation on it, like today there's no annotation, but maybe in the next lecture we'll be annotating the lectures. You'll have an annotated version of the lecture, right? So for example, today's pre-annotated slides are here, so you can find it. And then a video as well. So for the in-person classes, we expect everyone to be here, but we'll share a recording of the video after the class, maybe a day later or so, right? So as a reference. I would like to see if we can have a hybrid class. Maybe Monday can be in person and Wednesday could be on Zoom. How many of us would like that? Okay. So a lot of people are liking it. But yeah, but if you miss the Monday, then yeah, so you miss it. So we are not going to have any live stream of the Monday class, but we'll have a recording of it. The Wednesday will be on Zoom, so that'll be live. Right? Makes sense. Okay. Yeah, there's a few references here, but we'll add more references. You can take a look. Some of these topics will be covered in the first few weeks. Embeddings is something we're going to cover for sure. Some of these topics come up later. So, but there's many more references. We don't have like a textbook for this course, but plan is to post some lecture notes in some format every week. So there'll be some updates, concise concepts and everything that will update every week and you can access it. Okay. Any other questions on the page? Okay, so we covered the course page and resources. So structure of class, almost every class, there'll be some exceptions. The first 60 minutes will be some theory and some code samples that we'll go through. And the next 15 minutes, we'll have an in-class exercise that you can work on as a group. Get together in group and brainstorm, think about some practical application and see how the concepts we discussed tie in there. And then we'll also have some in-class coding exercise as well. So there'll be a few lectures where, especially on a Monday, we'll use the time for in-class coding exercise because that's last time we had this class, we found that people really found it useful because they could work with people and then figure out if they're blocked somewhere on some API or some other issue, you can get it resolved in class. So we'll also use the class time in some of the lectures for that. Okay. So here's a few things that I would like you to take away from this class, but obviously there are a few things that you would like to take away as well. We'll cover those in the survey. Is conceptually a better understanding of LLMs, right? And the workings of LLMs, of what are the application areas of LLMs? Like, did you know that LLM can be used in this way or is being used in this way in the industry right now? Those are the things that we'll look into here. of APIs. Like you should be very comfortable with working with LLM APIs, not just like an app or go to a web page, but you're actually calling an API and there's timeouts. How do you handle those things and costing, pricing? You made 1,000 calls and suddenly you got a little bit of a big bill. And then how do you handle that? And just take care of being comfortable with the APIs, right? And then intuition behind LLM models, like why does it work? And how is it so good in certain areas? Like we'll look into the intuition behind it. And also the theory behind LLMs. So that's conceptually. Implementation wise, almost every week you'll be coding. So this is like a coding class, in terms of assignments. Every week there'll be some coding assignment, because that's how you become hands-on, right? If you just cover concepts and theory, you're not really grounded in the application. So there's going to be coding, and then we'll set up some collab environment. So your first assignment, part of it is just set up your collab, set up your API, set up this, set up that, test it out. And then, working with Hugging Face models. So Hugging Face has a lot of good models to work with. So like becoming comfortable with taking a pre-trained Hugging Face model and then fine-tuning it or using it out of the box, things like that. And then showcasing your work on a web page. So we'll have one or two projects where you'll actually build a web page with a demo of something that's actually working, and you can send a link and we can test it out. So we want you to be able to be comfortable demoing LLM applications for certain use cases as well, right? And then fine-tuning LLM models is also important. It's not just about taking an existing LLM and then testing it out, but you want to be able to fine-tune at least a simpler or smaller LLM, right? Maybe not a large LLM, but a smaller LLM or a BERT model, a transformer model, like fine-tuning it and seeing that it's improving results. Like that's something that'll be part of the implementation too. And then ideas, like part of the group activities that you'll have in the class is to understand how you can apply LLMs in your next pet project, in your next company project, right? Or your next application area. Like really thinking in like, oh, I can use this here, I can use this there. Like not just conceptually, but like really on an implementation level, practical level, right? How can you chain LLMs to solve a problem? How do you evaluate LLMs? How can you trust LLMs? Like really being able to work with these ideas on a practical level is also a goal I would like for you guys. Yeah. Okay, let's go through some survey results. We had a survey. Okay, so hopefully everyone got a chance to discuss some applications of LLMs in your pet projects that you may want to see happen. And also hopefully this is an opportunity for you guys to get to know each other and work with each other for group projects and just general discussions that we'll be having throughout this course. So assignments, I want to just touch upon this, is we're going to have like four buckets. One is a conceptual assignment, because concepts are important, and understanding, having some solid understanding. So these will be typically once a week, and they could be even in class exercise. That's a conceptual question, or it could be an actual deliverable that you submit responses to. And typically it's like multiple choice, like pick one of the three or four, but they'll make you think on why is it that you're choosing this or the other, right? Then you have coding assignments. This is going to be the bulk of your grade is coming from coding assignments. Typically once a week, Google Colab based, might use PyTorch, LLM APIs, and other tools. Streamlit might be a web demo, whatever. Then we have mini projects. It's kind of an extended version of coding assignment. We'll get 2 weeks, but it'll be packed with a lot of deliverables. So you'll be busy with, whenever you have a mini project, there'll be a lot of work to do, but lots of learning as well. So in this course, more work is more learning. So you can obviously always watch something on YouTube to know more about LLMs, but it might not increase your understanding as much as the mini projects and coding assignments, right? So I think of learning as like maybe 40% is from textbooks or videos or articles, and then 60% is getting hands-on and working with the data, working and really understanding on a practical level, right? So And then we also have a project presentation. That'll also contribute to a significant portion of your grade because it exhibits your understanding from your work on the projects that we'll have in the finals week. So we'll have a couple of slots, so you can pick one of them and you can present. Okay. Any questions on this?
How strict is grading in sports? Like what, how do you guys grade?
So everything that'll be graded, whether it's conceptual or coding, will have a rubric, right? And the rubric is not going to be very like, okay, if you missed if you had a spelling error, then well, just kidding. But it's going to be very high level to make sure you're hitting certain buckets. You hit those buckets, you get that full grade. So it's going to be more category-based grading rather than like checking every single detail. But it'll be obvious if you missed out on something that was very important, it'll be obvious and you'll get penalized for it. But there'll be rubric for every single assignment or project that'll be followed. For the projects, probably groups of 2, actually. Yeah, just to make sure that everyone gets to contribute. Maybe groups of 3, depends. We'll see. Yeah, but we don't want anyone to freeload on the others. So that's why we're not going to go beyond 3. Okay.
Would the main project and coding assignment overlap at some point, or would it be set up in a way so that when we have the main project, we don't have a coding assignment?
You may have a conceptual assignment, but you won't have a coding assignment. So the code, it'll either be coding or mini project.
Okay.
So there's one more thing, Liz. If we have a project for the whole course, so we can either, the previous time we had this course, we had 2 or 3 mini projects and we had no project, right? But if we're going with a project option, which we haven't decided yet, then that project will overlap with everything because it'll be assigned at the beginning of the quarter. Okay, that's the only one that'll overlap. Everything else will be sequential. Okay. Yeah.
I just want to have the in-class exercise graded.
In-class exercise will be graded in some way, yes. So in the sense that have you made a submission? You might look at that. And then you'll get some percentage point for that. We might not look into the specific accuracy as much, but we'll definitely factor in the fact that you put in the work. So, yeah. Okay, sounds good. But all these things, I would say worry less about the grading and worry more about the learning, because that is more important. All these are all incentives for you to spend time so that you can learn better. This is not the goal, at least not for me. It's not like, and shouldn't be for you either. The goal is not to get a 4.0. The goal is to learn as much as you can and expand your current understanding of LLMs and be more ready for any job that requires LLM for you in the future. That's the goal. Does that make sense? Yeah. And if you look at it that way, then you'll learn a lot and you'll have fun. If you just are concerned about grades, you might miss out, right? So I'm just saying this, focus on the learning and the grades will happen too. So, yeah. Okay. Okay, let me see where we are on time. Okay, we're 5 minutes left. Okay. Yeah. So we'll pick up on, we have more content coming up. So we'll pick up on the content from next week. So we have 5 minutes left. I'll stop here because there may be people who come here with questions and we can discuss those. So the next lecture will be on Wednesday. It'll be on Zoom. So we're going to have a hybrid model. Monday is in person here, and then Wednesday will be on Zoom. Both will be recorded, but only Wednesday will be live stream. Okay. Sounds good. We'll catch up on Wednesday, and if you have any questions, you can just come by and we'll have a chat. Thank you so much.